Good morning. Welcome to our class again together. Last week's class was later in the day because I just forgot to hit the AM button rather than the PM button. So if you missed it for that reason, you know what it is. But today we're going to continue our study in Christ in the shadows of the Old Testament. What we've been doing is something interesting. This is like taking a jigsaw puzzle. When you get a brand new jigsaw puzzle, something happens. You take it, you open the box, and you empty all the pieces out on the table. And all you have is pieces. Nothing makes any sense. You've got the box lid to say this is what it's supposed to look like, but you just have the pieces. So you take one piece at a time and you begin to fit where you think it's going to go. And as the more pieces get put together, the clearer the picture becomes. That's the process we're doing in this class this time. We're taking a lot of pieces, things that don't look like they fit together, things that when they were written didn't appear to be fitting together. They didn't seem to make sense. They seemed to be too hazy. And yet, as you put them together, they seem to make more sense. And they're pointing to something that one day you say, ah, so that is the picture it was trying to do. What we're doing is a process called distillation. The best place to see distillation is with a funnel. With a funnel, you can do a lot of things, but it's got a big top to it and a little bottom. And as you throw things into the funnel, it gets closer and closer, and finally everything strains out at the bottom. We're just throwing a lot of stuff right now into the top of the funnel, and as the top of the funnel begins to fill up, it will begin to strain out the things we will be able to see, which is these things are going to point to Jesus. But when you read them in their context, when they were written, you don't know that. Last week, when we began this process of discovery, we started looking at Genesis chapter 3, the fall of man. In there is this reference that says, I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and her offspring, and he shall bruise your head, and you shall bruise his heel. Now, that's a very faint, very hazy reference to something. But here's what you can kind of just get at it very generally. That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense right now. And that is, someone who is born of a woman will destroy the power of the evil that has come in with the serpent. That will become part of the equation. First piece. Just a piece. Doesn't look like much. So we need more pieces to put the puzzle together. So today we're going to add another one. This one comes from Genesis chapter 49, where Jacob is blessing his sons. Now, a little bit of a background of why this takes place. This is a case where Jacob, the great patriarch, has these 12 sons. The 12 sons will become the 12 tribes of Israel, which become the nation of Israel. All of that will flow through time. So Jacob takes his moment as he begins to end his final journey in life to take every son and to say, here is what will become of you. Here is what your people will be. Will they be rich or poor? Will they be peaceful or always in a struggle? Will their borders be large or be compressed? Will you be a nomad or will you be settled? What will your life be? And so Jacob takes these sons individually and he says, this is what will come out of your life and out of your lineage. Judah's not where he begins, but Judah is where our story is today. That's where we've got to begin to make any sense out of this. He says Judah. And so in Genesis 49 and verse 8, it says, Judah, your brothers shall praise you. Now, that can mean a lot of things, but who is Judah? You need to settle that first, because that has everything to do with this prophecy, I believe, with this blessing. First of all, Judah is not the firstborn. The firstborn gets the lion's share of the inheritance. He becomes the patriarch of the family. He gets 2/3 of all the property. He controls the estate. He controls the future of the family. That's not Judah. It's Reuben. Judah is the third born son of an unfavored wife named Leah. He's way down in the pack. He's insignificant from the genealogical charts, what they would show. And his mother, because she has another son, she praises God. And so his name means, Judah means, I will praise. No wonder then that when this prophecy or this blessing takes place, he says, Judah, my brothers shall praise you. They'll call you by name. And when they call you by name, something dramatic is going to happen. But lest we believe that Judah is a deserving patriarch, think again. He's not. He has more blemishes than you can imagine, some that are terribly glaring. One time he got his daughter-in-law pregnant. He had a child through his daughter-in-law because he assumed she was a prostitute. What kind of a man does that? Judah did. But perhaps his greatest flaw comes in Genesis chapter 37. In Genesis 37, Joseph has been sent by his father to go check on his brothers. He comes to see them. They hate him with a hatred that cannot be put into words. They think he's a little snot, and they're going to give him his comeuppance. They see him coming. They take him. They strip him of that favorite long-sleeve robe that his father gave him to prove he wasn't going to have to work the fields like all of his brothers. And they threw him into a well, planning on killing him. The only problem is Reuben had an idea that, you know, when they're not looking, I'm going to yank him out of that well and send him home to keep him out of harm's way. But then Reuben has to leave the scene. And whose idea is it to sell Joseph into slavery? Judah. You go to Genesis 37, 26 through 27, and it says this, Then Judah said to his brothers, What profit is it if we kill our brother and conceal his blood? Come, let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hands be upon him, for he is our brother, our own flesh. And the brothers listened to him. You know, I guess you could make the argument very faintly that Judah really did save Joseph from being killed, perhaps. But Judah is mercenary. He is willing to sell his own flesh and blood. He's willing to sell his father's favorite son. He's willing to tear apart his family for a few bucks. What kind of man does that? Judah does. But he has a moment of redemption in the book of Genesis. Genesis chapter 44 is a sordid scene. The famine has come that Joseph had told the Pharaoh was going to come. It had followed 7 years of plenty, and now there was no food, and there was hunger and starvation in Canaan. And Jacob sends his boys to go buy grain. And through a lot of different things, this is the second trip they go. They have had to take Benjamin with them because they would not be able to buy grain without having him there to prove their points. But before they could return to Canaan, Joseph secretly, who recognized his brothers, but they didn't recognize him, Joseph secretly had his servants place the money back in their bag, plus some, plus his golden cup, his treasure. He lets them escape. They go a little ways out of Egypt, and when they're captured by the Egyptian army, brought back to Joseph, and there they uncover, and the man who has the cup and the money is Benjamin. He will be jailed as a thief. Suddenly, something intervenes. We read in Genesis 44 and verse 18, then Judah went up to him, to Joseph, and said, O my Lord, please let your servant speak a word in my Lord's ear, and let not your anger burn against your servant, for you are like Pharaoh himself. Then dropping down, he makes this speech. For your servant became a pledge of safety for the boy to his father, saying, if I do not bring him back to you, then I shall bear the blame before my father all my life. Now, therefore, please let your servant remain instead of the boy as a servant to my Lord, and let the boy go back with his brothers. For how can I go back to my father if the boy is not with me? I fear to see the evil that would find my father. In brief, Judah offers to take the place of Benjamin. He is willing to sacrifice his life for that of his brother. Let that soak in. It is to this Judah who was willing to give his life for another, that this blessing is given. So the blessing begins this way. Your hand will be upon the neck of your enemies, and your father's sons will bow down before you. That sounds very much like the dreams that Joseph had, where all of his brothers would bow down and serve him. But instead of Joseph, the ultimate adoration will be given to Judah and his family. Judah will control the events of history. Judah will be the one who that people will come and say, this is my Lord. Your father's sons shall bow before you. He's middle of the pack. He doesn't seem to make any difference to anybody. He's obscure. And yet to Judah and his family, some great honor will be given and is coming in the future. But then Jacob continued by saying, Judah is a lion's cub. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He stooped down, he crouched as a lion, and as a lioness, who dares rouse him? Lion hunts down the prey to kill it. From there, he stoops and rests and obscures. But do you dare disturb the lion in the field? Do you not respect the roar when you hear it? Judah will be a lion in Israel. Something great will happen. He will become the king of the jungle, is what the intimation is. So there's that other piece to it. But the third part is that the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, until tribute comes to him, and to him shall be the obedience of all the peoples. A scepter. Now, we usually think about scepters like we think of, say, the King of England. There's this large, ornate, gold with gem encrusted, monumental, massive thing. It is the symbol of the throne. And so we kind of take that and bring it over into Genesis and dump it onto here. But that would probably not be the best conception of this. The word scepter, while it can have the connotation of the regal and the ornate, many times is neither of those. It's just the term staff. Anything that is held in the hand of someone can be called a scepter. What is different is about whose hand is holding it. In fact, archaeologists have discovered ancient scepters buried in the sands of Canaan, and they reflect Canaanite personalities and Canaanite religions, but it tells you a little bit about what the conception of scepters were in that day and time. One is nothing more than kind of a brass handle with the heads of various of the pagan god on atop it. Another looks more like a spatula than anything else. It is gold that has been uh, hammered down smooth and left with a flower imprint on it. Doesn't look like great power. The problem is it's not the instrument that's the problem, it's who's holding it. And in fact, when you look at various pieces, you find out that the one who holds the staff, the impressive one, is the ruler. But it can be used in a lot of different ways. It can be used in the way of a weapon, for instance. In 2 Samuel chapter 23 and verse 21, Benaiah kills an Egyptian. It says, and he struck down an Egyptian, a handsome man. The Egyptian had a spear in his hand, but Benaiah went down to him with a staff and snatched the spear out of the Egyptian's hand and killed him with his own spear. He says that Benaiah was carrying a staff, same word as scepter, but it gave him power. There was something about when it was in his hand, it signified power, that he had something that he could use with it. It can also mean that of a shepherd, for instance. Ezekiel chapter 20, verse 37. Ezekiel talks about the straying sheep of God. And when he starts talking about God bringing them back, remember Ezekiel is part of the Babylonian captivity. He says this in chapter 20, verse 37 of his prophecy. God will make you pass under the rod, same word as staff, and will bring you into the bond of the covenant. He'll bring you back. He'll be the shepherd with the staff, guiding you and helping you get back to the bond of the covenant. In the hand of the shepherd is not just a stick. It has some way of herding the sheep. It's also used as a form of punishment, as in spare the rod, spoil the child. But you see it in Isaiah, who describes the nations who are much worse than Israel, who are now afflicting them, that God says, shall the axe boast over him who hews it, or the saw magnify itself against him who wields it? As if a rod should wield him who lifts it, or a staff should lift him who is not wood. He said, these nations who are boasting about their power and their greatness, do they not understand they're nothing more than the staff in the hand of God? That's a term for scepter. So if you put all these kind of things together, whether it's in the hands of a shepherd, the hands of a parent disciplining, the hands of a man who is wielding vengeance and punishment, it all comes out to this way. A scepter gives the person holding it power and authority over someone else or something else. Someplace in the line of Judah, the scepter will be held as a form of authority and power to destroy and to guide. The scepter will never depart from Judah. That's what the blessing says. And in fact, in the near term, you're going to find out that Judah is indeed the tribe of leaders. There are many great leaders. First of all, you've got Caleb, one of the two spies, along with Joshua, who said, "We can take the land," and did not rebel against God. He was a leader. He came out of the tribe of Judah. You also have David and Solomon and the rest of the family lineage, the dynasty that we're going to talk about next week or a week after. Now, it's interesting to note that Benjamin was the tribe of the very first king, Saul. But Saul displeased God. He was dispossessed. And then the scepter passed, if you will, to the hand of Judah. The scepter will not depart from your house. But this will provide something that has a magnificent sense to it. His leadership, Judah's descendants' guidance will produce something magnificent. Genesis 49:11-12. Binding his foal to the vine and his donkey's colt to the choice vine, he has washed his garments in wine and his vesture in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine and his teeth are whiter than milk. The images used are of great prosperity and peace. There will be riches like you can never imagine. No one would tie a colt to a vine because the vine is too precious and the colt would get loose. But instead, the colt stays there, and you tie it to something you want to keep. And if it doesn't happen, there's more to it. There's more there. The concepts of milk and wine, or the ideas of what the king would drink. These were luxuries in the ancient world. He's going to wash his garments in wine. He's going to use it as a washboard. He's going to use it as a washing machine. It is going to be flowing so freely that you can waste it if you have to. And his eyes will be darker than wine and his teeth whiter than milk. Oh, there will be something grand when he comes. Now, when you read all of that, we have all these pieces and you go, huh, isn't that interesting? But as we saw in last week's lesson, there's something going on behind the veil, something we cannot see, something that has not been made clear, something that's just really gauzy and blurry and hazy. What's going on behind the veil? Well, let's look at the images there. There's first of all the image of power and strength. He will come in like a lion. He will have control. He will have power. He will have respect. He will do things. He will hunt the prey and kill it. Never mistake the power of a lion. Secondly, you have this image of the authority and the ruling of the scepter in the hand, the staff between the feet. There, you have this authority. You have that he controls a kingdom. Well, what kind of authority? We don't know. What kind of a kingdom? We can only suspect, but it may not be what you think because it doesn't specify. It just says, into his hands will be placed the authority to control and to reign and to live. He will be a shepherd. He will be a punisher. He will be a savior. All of those go with that image. Who? Don't know. And I don't think you can miss the idea of the sacrificial substitute that is embedded into the character of Judah. I think Judah is a recipient of this because of a single event, and that is he's willing to take the place of his brother. There will be a Judah like him, one of his descendants, will become a sacrificial substitute for the people who need it. For those who are going to be put in bondage, he will pay the price for them. He will be a Judah. Say, take my life and let him go free. So if you take all of these things, and there's all these little pieces that they don't really make a lot of sense. You could say, well, it all played out in history, but you don't know what the history is yet. That is the beauty of a blessing. The blessing doesn't tell you anything. It says this is what is coming. So pay attention. So what is God's plan so far? See, if we take those pieces and pour them into the funnel and let them start to spin around, we're beginning to see these pieces, and they're beginning to fall into place. A person is going to be born of a woman, the seed of the woman. They are going to demolish evil. They will crush the head of the serpent. He will have the strength of a lion. He will roar and reign with majesty. He'll have one that has the staff in his hand, have the scepter in his hand. He will wield power, and he will be the king and the controller and the ruler over a dynasty, over a kingdom. Which one? I don't know. He is the one who will take the place of another like his ancestor did. And when you look at all those pieces, they don't make a picture yet. Just like the jigsaw puzzle, the pieces are out there and you start putting them in place, but it doesn't look anything like the pieces yet. Doesn't look like anything like the puzzle yet. Doesn't look like anything like it's supposed to look. You just got pieces, but they seem to be going together a little bit. We're still there. There are these images. They're faint. They're covered with a veil. It'll take more clarity to find it, which means there is more to come, which we'll take up next week. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you have enjoyed our class together. I think this is a fascinating study that perhaps we have known but never have really looked at. So I hope you're enjoying it. And today I wish you for a good day, and I'll see you again next Sunday.